Royce Martin today. Royce, thanks for joining us.
Yeah,
It's
man.
really
Good
good
to
to
be
see your
here.
face. And we'll get it going here the right. We're here on Catch Fire Show, and it's one of our first live shows in a while, and you're joining us from Boston, and I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, excited as well. I'm glad you reached out. This is great. Good to be
Cool.
here.
We're gonna roll the intro. We'll be right back. Royce Martin here on Catch Fire Show.
Has always been the key motivator.
I'll never forget my first time on the air.
This biomed stuff is really cool.
I don't daydream, I just do dreams. Built to fire, no camping. Imagine your next chapter for uncommon paths. It's the roadmap. A special guest you can learn from, more valuable than a treasure chest. A lot of knowledge, catch fire, turn impossible to a playground. Difficulties we do them in like a pool table, got holes for 'em. Inspiration, catch fire, find your passion and live for it. Start bold, it gets harder, dig further. Inspiration, catch fire, find your passion and live for it.
Well, we're here with Royce Martin today, and he's joining the show live from Boston. So if I can figure out all the buttons here, we should have him in just a minute. And remember, the Catch Fire Show is the place where we're talking about non-traditional career paths, talking about who you serve, how you serve, and what you serve, and putting that together. So here we go. Royce is with us. Man, it's good to see your face.
Bro, it's good to be here. Thank you.
So you're coming to us live from Boston, Massachusetts. You're, I believe, attending Berklee right now. What's the weather like today?
It's like 50 something and cloudy. So the day is gray. And we got some rain earlier, but I was at my apartment, so I didn't really feel much of it. So I'm chilling.
Yeah.
It's gloomy in Boston, but it's kind of always like this. So
okay, so you kind of get used to it a little bit.
Somewhat, but you know, the weather is getting better. It's like this past Saturday we had like a 70-something degree day, so I was like, it was great.
Nice. Okay, well, you've been kind of on the East Coast for a few years now doing school. What are some of the differences you've noticed between the Midwest and the East Coast?
It's definitely a lot faster here on the East Coast. When I was back home in St. Louis, like even the pace that people walk on the sidewalk was a lot slower than it is up here in Boston. So that's one difference. The accent is different. People think that St. Louis is the South here in Boston, but like that's not necessarily true. I guess it's not at all true. The culture in Boston is just different. I think it's more city-like. So
yeah. Oh, that's cool. Well, you and I met, I don't even know how many years ago it was, like over 10, maybe?
Yeah, something like that. I was in 6th grade, of all times to meet you, and of all things to be doing when I met you. You were teaching me like light board directing for a musical. So yeah, man, I remember that fondly. So I still appreciate that.
Yeah, that was super fun for me too, because I, instead of like changing out lights and rehanging stuff, like I just spent a lot of time with you, and then Eric, was learning how to stage manage too. He had never stage managed something before, and that was just fun to like teach you guys and see you learn. And you both killed it, so that was great.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. Had you like, were you already working on stage management and stuff like that before, or like light board and stuff? Or
well, yeah, that's kind of the reason I started the show, is because I did my degree in theater. So I, up through college and stuff like that, I studied theater and theater design, and then pivoted after that. And so, so it was fun to use my degree that I was still paying for at the time. So,
nice. Yeah, I hear you.
That was fun. So, well, so you went to Grand Center Arts for high school, which is a magnet performing arts school in St. Louis, right, in our performing arts district. How did you have the affinity for the arts before you enrolled there, or how did you, like, if you would have rewind or zoom back to 6th grade, started in middle school, where did you find yourself interested, ambivalent, kind of
Yes.
where were you at?
So I wasn't interested in the arts to the degree that I thought that I could be an artist. I was just interested in it, I guess, like anybody would be naturally interested in it. And it wasn't until like 8th grade that I started to take a specific interest in music and pursue it. So basically, before that, I was like just doing anything at the school since it was an art school. I needed to do an art, so like I just picked whatever they put me in, and that ended up being theater, which is how we met. And I actually liked it. I thought that it was like a cool thing for me to be doing, at least at that time. But like whole time, I was really interested in playing some instrument. I wasn't really sure what instrument I would want to play, but all of my siblings are musicians, not necessarily instrumentalists, but they all are affiliated with music. So I thought that that could be cool if I found my power in that. And in 8th grade, I guess that's what happened. So the school got a keyboard grant for 13 new pianos or keyboards in the band room. And coincidentally, that was the same year that I got put into band class, even though I couldn't play an instrument. So they just had me on percussion. I was in the back playing the percussion, or was supposed to be doing that, and then I would like sneak off and play on the new keyboards, and that was great, man. Like that was a whole lot of experience just coming to school and getting to play. But then that same year, my sister got a keyboard at home, which was actually like a keyboard slash toy. So I would play that. It was like 76 keys or whatever. I would play that on my lap until one day it broke, and then I just got affiliated with like different programs in St. Louis that helped me out. Pianos for People is the biggest of those programs. They gave me
Yes.
an actual acoustic piano. I just started like that, and I played throughout high school. I ended up winning a competition, and then all of a sudden, everybody in St. Louis started to take somewhat of an interest in what I could do with the instrument, I guess. And I ended up here in Boston. So that's the conspiration.
No, that's great. And you mentioned just kind of in the notes you're exchanging before the show that it was like a Casio. So like you learned on a Casio like 76 key keyboard on your lap. That's how you learned to play?
Yeah, it was actually a Yamaha. But Casio always gets the fire for being like, or for making cheap keyboards. But yeah, it was like that though. We didn't have a stand or anything, so my parents, they bought this keyboard for my sister, and I guess they didn't think to get the stand or a bench that would go along with it. We just literally had the console, the keyboard. So originally we would just set it up on my sister's desk, and I would go to her room every day and play until she got tired of like hearing the noise and stuff.
Yeah.
So I took it to the back room, the family room, and then I would just like literally set it on my lap and then play whatever I could that I heard, because I couldn't read music or nothing like that. So I would play that stuff, and then the rest is history, bro. I got interested in classical music, and I started playing a lot of classical music. And if you play that stuff or try to play that stuff, it'll make you develop your technique. So I got, I guess, better technically at the instrument, and then I think that's when people started to take an interest. Yeah.
So how did you pivot? I mean, as a self-learner, pivoting to classical music, did you then find some mentors or some teachers, or did you just keep learning by yourself, like how to read music yourself, and how did that work?
Well, I was already at Grandson Arts Academy, so it was kind of like it wasn't the hardest thing to jump into. So 2 years later, I think, or the year later, actually, my freshman year, I studied music theory with Mr. Martin, no relation to me, but Mr. Martin taught me the basic fundamentals, I guess, of music theory. And actually, in 8th grade, I learned some stuff about music theory, like the lines and the spaces on the staff and like what those represented, and like the notes that corresponded with those positions. That was 8th grade. And then 9th grade, like I said, I got into a theory class, and I learned somewhat more of the fundamentals of music theory. And I discovered a lot of stuff that I didn't actually know about. And I was like taking the first steps at actually trying to attempt reading scores of music that I would want to play on the piano. And then 10th grade, I got into advanced music theory, either 10th grade or 11th grade. It might have been 11th, but then, it went to the next level. I was taught by Mr. Hagen. He was a great teacher. He was also a jazz band teacher. Oh, you remember him? Nice.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'll keep doing the name drop then, since I know we got that connection. But Mr. Hagen, he taught me AP music theory. And that really took it to even though I got a C in that class, that took it to the next level for me. Like I really started to understand more about the fundamentals of theory and even the more advanced stuff. And we like got to delve into a lot of music that was out there and that I guess I just hadn't discovered before. So that was great. That really was great.
Oh yeah. No, I just want to circle back and say, like, I think the name dropping in this case, in my opinion, is helpful to give honor to those folks because, I mean, these are some folks that have invested in you and so many others, and that's great.
Facts,
And then
yeah.
The other thing for people that might have not been around music theory, it is not for the faint of heart. And you're kind of talking about it with this like semi-excitement, like, oh, this really piqued my interest. I mean, for some people, this is like the death wish, like, oh my gosh, like, how am I going to get out of this?
Yeah, I never really had that experience with it. I remember being kind of terrified of the idea that there was more staffs than the treble clef, or like there were more clefs than the treble clef. So like after learning treble clef, I guess you would have to end up learning bass clef or alto clef and stuff like that. And I thought that it was like relearning the entire system. So that was pretty daunting, at least at first. But like I got to overcome a lot of that stuff just by the excitement of playing, basically. It's like I would be so excited to play that I guess I just didn't end up being too nervous about it. But that's not to say I wasn't nervous at any point. Like I got this terrible thing with stage fright, bro. I'm like petrified behind stage. Yeah, now that I think of it, actually, you asked about my mentors and people who helped me along the way. Definitely people at Granson Arts Academy, but people outside of there too. Pianist for People was a great influence for me, just in terms of like the piano, obviously, but a sense of belonging, I think, in a community to belong to. And Patricia Eastman, she was affiliated with Pianist for People, and she taught me basically, actually literally for free. She would come pick me up and then teach me at her house and then drop me back off at home. And then like all other types of people who were associated with her down the way. And then she got me into this free piano camp. It actually wasn't free. It was really expensive and really prestigious, but she vouched for me and got me in, even though I really wasn't even ready. And I got to go for free. So it was a lot of people who really helped me out.
Yeah.
Amy Siebert, Patricia Eastman, Daniel Sheen.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I know that Tom, one of the founders of Pianist for People, passed about a year ago now. And I didn't know him personally, but I knew people that traveled back to St. Louis for his funeral. It seemed like a community hero had passed. I mean, this wasn't just somebody that had, was wealthy and just like, I'll give some money to, and put my name on it. I mean, it was somebody that was extremely beloved in the community. And
he was definitely one of those types of figures. Like, he was a philanthropist, and I think that's my first time saying that because I would never actually think of him as that, but I guess in theory that's what he actually was. But aside from his philanthropy, it was like a deep connection and I think a responsibility that he felt to make the community a better place, as cliche as that sounds. But I think that's actually what he was doing. That's definitely what he ended up doing for me. And I think that's the long-term effects of Pianos for People. I think it makes that community and the St. Louis community at large a better place than it is. Like it's those types of grassroots things that, take a city from one thing and make it another. So, I can't commend Tom Townsend enough. He is actually a hero. So to say the absolute least about him, there's that.
Yeah. And I mean, it's interesting how some of the most impactful things are counterintuitive. Like pianos are heavy. I mean, they're heavy and, I mean, I've seen people that have, started bicycle things and stuff like that. I mean, you see a warehouse full of bikes. I mean, that's overwhelming enough, but I mean, many, many pianos. I mean, that's many tons of, and then these things are not easy to move. They're, all that kind of stuff. And taking one, I mean, it's probably not as big of a commitment as a puppy, but I mean, it's, it's like you have to have space for it and you probably have some impetus to use it. And just that would be something that would not only have an impact on you, but do something that you've noticed in the community, I think says a lot. So.
Yeah, exactly. It really is cool. And I was really, really interested in it. I mean, I can't tell you how interested I got into it for basically out of nowhere, basically. So it ended up working out for me. And I really appreciate the people who helped that become true.
Okay, and then Scott Joplin House. You've been doing some summer work. It sounds like at Scott Joplin House, and maybe around the ragtime music traditions.
Yeah, man. Yeah, got to. So, seasonally, I guess, ever since I first graduated high school, for the summers, I would play at the Scott Joplin house. Originally, my position there was just to play and um, give tours, I think. But that ended up changing when I started to like talk to the people, talk to the visitors, and at the end of the tour, and after I got done playing for them, and I would give them basically a whole lecture about Scott Joplin's music and basically how it connects to American music and how it connects to contemporary music, I guess, and more specifically American music. And I would talk to them and like reach these like amazing points where it would become like this dialogue. Like they would share an experience with me that they got from the music growing up or at any point in their life, and I would share mine, but I would come with all these things that I kind of picked up along the way based off of my, I guess, raw interest in the music. And they would be so fascinated by it that they would leave these great reviews. Man, it was really nice, the things that they would say, and like we would give out these letters basically at the end of the tour, um, or cards in which people filled out their review of the tour, and they would mail it back into either of the state or something like that. But I got word of it, and the reactions were pretty positive. So I continued that, and it became sort of a formal position. And I started talking to people, and I became all of a sudden a lecturer of American music, and I started to become like a historian. And I got deeper and deeper into that rabbit hole, and I started just talking to people, spreading the gospel of Scott Joplin, and people got interested in it, man. And also, I think I got more interested in it too. Like it's like when you teach people, you learn more yourself. So I got more interested in it, and I started to feel the connections between it and St. Louis, since Scott Joplin spent some time there, and like the whole culture that made him come to St. Louis to play ragtime in the first place. And I got really, really into it, and it connected to me as a musician. And I've since been actually more interested in playing ragtime and spreading that word, and
Cool.
champion those pioneers. So yeah.
I have not done any research. I probably should have in ragtime before the call. But did that intertwine with jazz at all, or St. Louis's jazz roots?
Oh yeah, definitely. So ragtime is the musically, I guess, historically speaking, the immediate precursor to jazz. Even though a lot of people, I guess, don't look at it that way, I think a good amount of people do. But I think oftentimes it's not realized. But yeah, aside from it, like chronologically being the precursor to jazz, it is also very obviously, theoretically, the precursor to jazz, musically speaking. And what I mean by that is like the syncopation that makes up jazz is what characterizes ragtime. Like that is the element of ragtime, both ragtime and jazz actually. And the way that the instrumentation in the jazz band developed is a consequence of what the ragtimers were doing long before that. Um, all sorts of music can be, um, all types of American music have to give credit to ragtime, basically, gospel included, gospel, jazz, rock and roll. There are so many figures that come out of the ragtime tradition that end up influencing these later traditions. So definitely, and St. Louis has a big role to play in it. That's one thing that people underrate, actually. People like often look over St. Louis, but I'm trying to spread that word too.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I think that it's interesting to me. I mean, like you hear these things like Gateway to the West. Obviously, the St. Louis Arch is one of the most prolific landmarks that people are like. Oh, the only thing I know about St. Louis is the arches there, but that symbol. It was used, like the city was used by the federal government, throughout the Indian Wars and up through, and there's a lot of history of the nation before there was, the 50 states that there are now. There was, a tradition of using St. Louis as this launching pad for things that would maybe be summarized as oppression, and and then. But then there's all these cultural inroads that came with it. And if you look at some of our strife, even that we're dealing with to this day, it's like, it's kind of that overlap between federal government experiments, commerce that rose up around it, local opinions versus, I mean, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
As
right.
you're now kind of outside looking in, and obviously every city in the United States and in the world has their problems, but when you now a little bit looking back, from the East Coast to St. Louis, like what are some of the things that you see that stick out to you?
As far as differences go, or
Yeah, or just like
similarities in the way that the culture developed.
No, any of those things are good. I just was thinking that when you're here, when you're at any place, you're kind of like, oh, this is the way it is, and I would like to change this. But maybe when you go away for a minute, there's one or two things that sticks out there, like, oh man, these are the big things, or these are the things that are really important.
Right. So I guess I can speak to whatever I think Boston is. So Boston, being one of the oldest cities, claims a lot of things like that. They have here in Boston, we have the oldest subway, the T, and it's like the first subway to be built here in the States, and it looks like that too. It's really raggedy, but it does the job, and it gets people from point A to point B. But they claim a lot of those achievements, I guess. So it's a historic city. Paul Revere, I think his house is here, even though I haven't been to it. There's a lot of Harriet Tubman monuments up here too, and it's like very obviously a historic town, aesthetically speaking. You just walk around the city and you see these age-old brownstones, and that feel is there. It feels like you're walking around a village. Even the most like commercially attractive spots look like that. So it's a pretty cool spot. That's the thing that I think I enjoy the most about Boston. Just being here. I really like history, I guess, if you haven't noticed. Something about it just, I guess, excites me low key. Yeah, so Boston has that history. St. Louis is something like that. St. Louis has a lot of history too, but I think what ends up happening in St. Louis is like people care less about it for a lot of different reasons. I think the biggest of which is because St. Louis doesn't have as big a commercial market as other cities like Boston or Los Angeles or any city on like the Sun Belt. And St. Louis is one of those Midwestern towns that is almost like on the brink of social extinction, bro. Like people just almost don't care about St. Louis at all. So, it takes people to go out and like tell that story. But yeah, there are definitely a lot of similarities between the two. And, I guess to your point about what was bubbling up as a result of like all the oppression and stuff, like I think anywhere you go, when you try to suppress people, they end up doing all these things to, I guess, lash out and artistic explosions happen. So St. Louis definitely is a testament to that story.
Yeah. Switching gears just a little bit, you have some things about you. It seems like where you're kind of at the intersection of some things, the way that you dress, the way that you carry yourself, the interest that you have, and even maybe the education that you're getting isn't maybe stereotypical things. And I just wondered, I'm trying to get to this idea of code switching. I feel like that there's a inordinate and unfair bias that, like maybe coming on this podcast and talking about piano, you have to say things in a certain way. And that if you used certain words, or if you didn't speak about the art in a certain way, that might discredit you. And I wondered if you'd ever experienced that, hopefully not here, but if that was something that you'd had to deal with as you are coming up.
That's interesting. That's a really interesting question. I remember being in ninth grade when I was first obviously taking interest in the piano and having to therefore admit it to my friends, my Black friends actually. I remember saying that it felt similar to, and I don't want to offend nobody saying this, but I remember thinking this, that it felt similar to coming out, like coming out of the closet, as if I was like gay or something, but like telling people that I played the piano felt similar to doing something like that, and that it felt like this monumental thing that I kind of didn't want people to know, of all things though. And I spent some time trying to figure out why that was. And I think it has something to do with the way the culture has, I guess, dwindled into this idea that any form of self-expression is any form of self-expression ought to be suppressed, or it's like close to expression of, I guess, femininity in some type of way. I don't even know how you might even come up with an idea like that, but that's what it ended up being basically. So yeah, I remember being like really reluctant to tell my friends that I could play the piano. That's something that I guess I obviously don't care about now, and I'm glad that I did end up telling them about. But yeah, there is that, and I think sometimes I feel like I need to do a bit of code switching, but there have been some people that I look at and have influenced me to just, I guess, speak the way that I do. So yeah, like one of which is John Baptiste. So John, he's the Late Show, Stephen Colbert Late Show band leader, but he, whenever he goes into interviews or whatever, like is expressing himself, I notice that he's just like himself. He just brings that New Orleans vibe and almost slang into his dialect, and like
Yeah.
wherever he goes, however he talks, he'll just like use it. And honestly, seriously speaking, before that, I didn't even know that you could actually do that on a public stage and still be considered a serious person.
Yeah.
But it works, and I realized, like, when I was listening to him as a teenager, like that's something that you can do, and that's something that's actually okay. So yeah, sometimes actually though, and this is, I guess, the last side of it. Sometimes I actually feel like I'm doing too much when I speak, bro. Like even now, I think I feel sometimes I feel like I'm saying more things than I actually need to express my point. But it's just the way I talk, so it's a hard thing to change.
Well, I mean, there's that old quote: "If I had more time, I would have written a shorter letter."
Yeah,
Something
right,
about like
exactly.
to get simplicity, you need time, and I can at least resonate with that. So, man,
Hmm.
as a
Same,
verbal
man, same.
processor,
Hmm.
jeez Louise,
I hear you.
grateful for all the people that have continued to stick with me.
Thanks.
So,
Yeah, man.
I was listening to Oprah's doing a series of interviews on Apple TV. And I feel bougie talking about Apple TV still, but I'm trying to get over it. But one of the interviews she did that I kind of watched to try to learn more about interviewing is with Matthew McConaughey, and he has a new book out, and she interviewed him on his book, and his book is, I guess, a culmination of journals that he wrote over many, many years. And one of the things they touched on at the end of the interview is when he was in college and he just started considering being an actor, and he was still too gun shy to tell anybody that he wanted to be an actor. He wrote down a list of goals for himself that they kind of reflected through the interview that he had met all those goals. But one of them was to win an Academy Award. And he was like, I never remember writing that down. I never looked at it again after I wrote it down in my fraternity house, like in my bed or whatever. Like, and he was like, and I guess like that was still before I told anybody publicly or to my friends that I wanted to be an actor. And I was just wondering, like, when you're you don't have to say anything, that you want to keep to yourself, but are there any goals that you have or any things that you're looking towards the future, like, oh man, this is
so
where I'm going?
I can say it now and make it happen in the future. I don't know. I mean, obviously I have aspirations and things that I would like to do, but I'm not sure if I think of anything on a day-to-day specifically that I think of, that I would think about prioritizing right now to say. But I mean, obviously I think about things in places that I want to be in the future. So I want to be a film composer, and I'm doing a good amount of that right now. I'm actually really fortunate to have met a lot of people in the industry that I guess care to hire me. I'll just put it like that. So there's that, and I'm grateful for those opportunities, and I want to put myself in a position to keep receiving those. And something that I really aspire to is to travel the world and do that musically. So at some point, sooner or later, or both, I would like to play the piano in the most random places around the world, near and far, and just experience different people and experience different places. Yeah, I think like personal things, I just want to keep growing and evolving and learning new things. I mean that seriously too. Like I just want to, be as evolved a person as I can possibly manage, because I'm just trying to figure so many things out right now. Sometimes it gets clouded. So yeah, whatever that might mean to the future, or my Matthew McConaughey moment in the future, I look back at this interview and see like that's what I wanted to do. I hope that means something. But yeah, I just want to be the best version of myself, whatever that might mean.
No, that's cool.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is the right time to do it because I have a few more questions for you, but I just, Ross Jordan even commented on the Facebook stream, but I mean, there's just so many of us that are so proud of you and so honored to be a part of your story. And I want to say that, but then also say that like, we don't like you because you were like the one that made it. Like, I don't know if that's what it means. You know what I mean? Like, we genuinely like you as a person.
Yeah.
Like, you're valuable and you're worthy because you're just Royce. And hearing your story is tremendous. But we're just, thanks for including all of us. I think is kind of the big picture there. So,
bro, you say Ross Jordan. I remember when, like, 9th grade, that's when I met him, when I met his daughters. My friend, my close friend Asante was more close with his daughters than I was, but I ended up, I guess, being close with them mutually. But, we went to their house on Halloween. It was a really cold night. And I just remember, I think that might have been my first time being at, I don't want to like mischaracterize this experience, so I'll be careful with it. But that was my first time being at like a white peer's house. And I just remember thinking, me and Asante actually, I just remember us talking with each other about the fact that it felt so different and that everything just felt nicer and more friendly and, and easier, I guess. And I guess we remember sharing that experience and meeting the parents or whatnot, meeting Ross and his wife. But I just remember that, man. That's crazy that you just brought his name up. But he ended up being one of the people in my village that would, cheer me on and help me feel inspired. So shout out to him if he's still there. I didn't even realize we were live too. So there's that.
There's that too.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I wanted to talk to you about is the concept of practice. So there's a lot of people that aspire to be good at things and then they kind of just like to do it or not do it. And one of the just maybe low-key experiences I had with you is you offering to accompany Devontae when I think he sang Grandma's Hands at school. Do you remember that at all?
Bro, that's a throwback. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. I remember that. Yeah.
And I just remember being blown away. Like, accompanying people is not glamorous. Like, it's like, and just your humility in that. You played phenomenally, but I was kind of blown away by you taking the opportunity to practice, you taking the opportunity to collaborate, even though you didn't need to. And I feel like that might have shaped some of what you're doing now. Can you kind of reflect on that a little bit with us? That's
really interesting. Yeah, I forgot all about that. I guess I didn't forget about it, obviously, but yeah, that was a pretty cool moment. We did the talent show in school. I forget what grade I was even in. I might have been a senior. But yeah, I guess the question is, like, do I ever feel like I could get to a point where I'm too good for certain things or to play in certain spaces? And the answer to that is no, definitely no. And I often find that a lot of the places that might be stereotyped, I guess, as less than types of places are the best places to get the experience. Like, bro, the Black church, man, I can't give justice in words to like the type of effect that the music of the Black church has, man. Like, it's deep, like it really runs deep. And even that is really connected to the Scott Joplin story that I tell and the ragtime story. But the music of the Black church, man, is really profound. And like I noticed that sometimes, at least the musicians start to feel this way, that like they are sometimes left out of like the elite music circles. But bro, the best players are there. Like the best players are the ones that people don't know about at all. And they are the people who know the most chords and they know the most melodies, and they got the most, versatility if it actually came down to it. So, with that being said, I never feel like I'm too good to play anywhere. Honestly, I strive to be a musician who can walk into any room and play any type of setting. So I don't know how well I can do that, but I try to be that, and I try to learn a lot of different things from a lot of different traditions. So,
Did you get any chance to watch that recent PBS documentary called The Black Church?
Yeah, I haven't. I saw an ad for it, I think on YouTube or something like that.
Yeah.
But no, I haven't. Have you seen it?
Yeah, I mean, well, it was on around Facebook, so I just got the Amazon PBS documentary subscription so I could watch it.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, first of all, talk about connecting tissue. I mean, there was like political, cultural, and music at the least, right? Those three threads
right.
wove through it all. And maybe I knew some of parts of the threads, little bits, but definitely didn't understand how they all connected. And so just thing after thing after thing. And so I just want to commend that to people listening. But I just, as you're saying, you're connecting that with the Scott Joplin story and stuff. I just don't know if we can do that enough, because the tradition that I was raised in was said that, Americans don't have a theology of suffering, right? And we, I mean, maybe majority culture doesn't, but the Black church does. And it's not only just a theology of suffering, it might be one of the most prolific, God ordained theologies of suffering in the world. And so it's a big deal.
Yeah, it definitely runs deep in the Black church. I think the Black church is like the center for all of those stories. But yeah, it really is. I think in the music, like the music is laced with the Black American experience, and the Black American experience throughout all of its history, basically. There's an interesting figure. I used to talk about her at the Scott Joplin house. Arizona Drains. She was a blind piano player who played ragtime music, and she was a pretty good ragtime player. And she ended up incorporating her ragtime technique to the gospel songs that she would play, since she would play also in the church. And that was a big no-no. Ragtime was considered like this party music, dirty music, or whatever. So the church didn't want any affiliation with it. So, at first they shunned her, but somehow she ended up getting to play at this big gospel convention of some sort. And she incorporated the ragtime technique with the gospel music, and it caught hold. Like, people started to incorporate that into churches across the board, like the Black church. And that ended up being the sound. So like now when you listen to even Scott Joplin, even a figure like that, but there's a lot of other people who aren't as known that have similar impacts on the music. But even when you listen to somebody like Scott Joplin, you can hear the similarities between his music and gospel music. And I think that connection is so profound, bro. It's like it runs really, really deep. A lot of times when I hear it, I cry. So like I used to be at the Scott Joplin house telling, these monumental Black stories to the visitors. And like a lot of times we would get visitors from like Southside Chicago and these pretty, what would you say, impoverished areas. And they would come through and they would just listen to me tell these stories. And like, it was a different type of experience to tell them about this lineage of people that they are somehow connected to. And in that, see that they saw what they could actually be. And I would be like, man, impacted by it, bro. Like it was so many times where I would actually be in tears, actually crying. So that was another part of that job. It was just everything about it, being able to tell that story and spread that tradition and, tell people about that music that just made it a next level experience. Right?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then I could talk about some of this stuff all day, so I'm trying to cut myself off a little bit too, because it's just fascinating to me. But just last to touch on this, I mean, maybe it's not a pivot, maybe it's kind of like an occlusion or a plus, but this idea of doing the film scores, I mean, for me, music composition I can understand how that's natural progression, but kind of dovetailing it with commerce. And then the most recent project, at least I've learned that you've done, is the Fresh Prince reunion. Sorry.
Fresh Prince. Yeah. No worries. Yeah. I had to think of it myself.
Yeah. So it's like composition, makes sense to me. But going into commerce and then doing that style of music, from maybe where your roots are, or what we played at the top of the show, that style. I mean, there's a lot of abstractions there and a lot of leaps. How did you get all the way there?
When you say commerce, you mean like making music sound, I guess, in the way that it could generate money, like making music for commercial appeal.
Yeah, or
basically.
having or building value, to get compensated.
Oh. I don't know. I think all of those. I think the basic fundamental tools that I learned in music helped me with the music that I ended up creating for, like HBO. Like somebody might say obviously, but what I mean basically is that those tools that you learn, the fundamentals, the basics, this is G, this is where this is on the piano, end up connecting to everything else that I play, so much so that I ended up incorporating just those basic elements without ever actually having to venture off into like the more advanced stuff, although I actually enjoy that sometimes. But a lot of people know in commercial music there isn't that much of a place a lot of times for advanced harmonies and advanced rhythmic styles and stuff. So, you just make do with the basics. And yeah, I was actually thinking today, I owe a lot of credit to Mozart for the way that I craft melodies now. Not that all my melodies sound like Mozart, but just the way that he understood how to make a melodic shape and how to start it, how to end it, how it needed to climax, how it needed to resolve. Like I realized, I think something like this week, how big of an influence that plays on my musical composition to this day. So,
wow.
Yeah.
A few living mentors, a few dead mentors. Sounds like a good combination.
Yeah, right. So yeah, it's all connected, man. I guess I would say to anybody trying to get into commercial music, just keep trying and meet the right people. A lot of times it really is who you know as opposed to what you know.
Yeah.
Though you still have to know a lot of stuff when you get to know the people who could put you in the right positions. But it's a lot of it is a name game.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate you representing all you represent about St. Louis and stuff like that, and it'll be really fun to watch where you keep going here in the next few years.
Yeah.
So
I appreciate that.
And feel free to drop by the show and tell stories. Maybe we could get Ross to dial in next time or something like that. So it'll be fun. Okay. Well, cool, thanks so much for joining us today, and I will talk to you soon.
Cool, man. Thank you for having me. I really appreciated this. I hope the things that I said came across clearly. So I appreciate you.
You did a great job. Talk to you
Thanks,
soon.
Man. Talk later.
Strip it down.